Andy, welcome. Good to have you with us.
Thank you, Justin. Good to be here.
So, Andy, you really have mastered a whole extensive sales process that you call standout selling. What is the difference between standout selling and, say, standard selling?
It's a great question, Justin. I think from my background of being a professional buyer where I used to beat up salespeople for a living, to being the top salesperson in the UK for a print and office supplies environment, I had to find a new way of selling. I had 150 competitors who sold exactly the same thing as I did, same product, same service, same quality, from the same catalogue, yet because our franchise had to pay royalties to head office, I had to charge 15% more. So I had to find a way of selling that wasn't about the best product, wasn't about the best service, because everything was the same. I had to get people to buy into me, to want to work with me, and provide them a level of attention and get them to realize that there was value in dealing with me to be worth a 15% premium. And that's the kind of thing I teach around the world. The challenges I find these days is that for a lot of salespeople, the buyers have more choice than ever before. The buyers can choose, especially after the internet, from 10, 15, 20 different providers. So it becomes very hard to differentiate. So standout salespeople do certain key things differently to make sure that they win the business, they retain the business, and when they win the business, they do it at the price they want to charge, rather than the price the buyer's trying to beat them down to.
Right, because we really are almost all commodities. I mean, you think about it, virtually anything that any of us have got to offer, somebody else is offering pretty much the same thing, right? And if they're not, and you're offering something of real value, they soon will be. So in that increasingly commoditized world, how do we stand out?
So I always say, if your product isn't 10 times as good as the competition, if your service isn't 10 times as good as the competition, if your price isn't 1/10 of the competition, if there's no obvious difference in the sales process, the difference has to be the salesperson.
Right.
We have to stand out. We have to differentiate in the way we deal with people, in the process we go through, to make sure we demonstrate additional value so people want to work with us and pay a premium. If we don't do that, we'll always be giving away our products and services for much less than we deserve and losing far more business than we should do.
And that's really it, right? I mean, people do business not with companies, they do business with people. So it is that individual. So the ones who get the deal, what are they doing differently?
So there's a number of key things, Justin. I suppose to give some big ones is that the real standout salespeople in the process that I train see an equality between themselves and the buyer. Too many salespeople, and especially people that aren't professional salespeople that come into running a photography business or a video business or an events company or something where they wouldn't consider themselves a salesperson, yet they have to go out and win new business for their company, therefore they're in sales. They kind of almost put the buyer on a pedestal. And instead of their sales strategy becoming, I'm going to go out and win this work, their strategy becomes hope. Well, I'll fill in this tender and I hope I'll win the work. I'll put forward this proposal and I'll hope I'll win the work. I'll go out and talk to these people over the phone. I'll send them my prices over the internet. I'll go and meet with people. I'll submit what I think we could do and I hope I'll win the work. That is a very poor sales strategy in today's market. You will put I know lots of business owners who put lots of effort into their business and don't get the results they deserve because they're not doing the right things in the sales process.
So let's talk about those right things. What do we need to do when we get out there that's going to make the difference?
So I suppose the first thing is the mentality of we are equals. So it's we can add value to them, they can add value to us by paying us for it. So it's understanding that we don't want to turn into beggars. Because the challenge is now, because the buyers have lots of choice, it's very easy for them to play God. And almost, right, well, I'll have all these people running around after me. So you'll have a meeting and say, please send me a proposal. And the salesperson or business owner has to go away, put this proposal together. The buyer hasn't even agreed to read it. The decision maker hasn't agreed when they're going to speak to them next, what the next stage is. So everyone just submits these whole proposals. The buyer or decision maker really doesn't read any of them and goes back to the person they were thinking of using in the first place. The whole process is a massive waste of time. The challenge is, or one of the things that a standout salesperson does, is they understand very early in the process what chance they've got of winning this business or not and acting accordingly. The challenge is if you don't find that out, you'll go through the entire sales process when the buyer or decision maker has got no intention of using you, but you'll still meet with them, you still put a proposal together, you still might do a presentation, you put in the same amount of effort as you would do if you won the business, but you'll get nothing.
So
There's too much of that going on.
Initially, you're saying you don't just go out there and kind of spray and pray. You want to really select that qualified prospect and then get a real sense whether they're serious buyers so that you don't waste time. So how do you know? How do you know? I mean, everybody, they see an attractive tender, they want to go for it. How would you distinguish between a serious buyer and one who's just looking for
So let's take a
quote?
tender situation, Justin, because it would vary depending on which situation we're in.
Well, South Africa doesn't. There's not a lot of tendering that goes on.
Okay.
Yeah. No, I was kidding. I was so kidding. It's just I don't think you really sell them. I think you just have the connection. But that is all coming to an end very soon, Andy.
Of course.
In fact, through last week, 2 weeks ago. Go on. What do we do?
So in a tender situation, somebody has always influenced that tender. So if you've had no contact with that buyer or decision maker before the tender comes out, you are highly unlikely to win it. As a professional buyer, I spent millions of pounds a year on buying all kinds of products, and we went out to tender. I kind of had an idea who I was thinking of using before we put the tender out, but I had to show a fair process, had to give everyone an equal chance. But if the tender just backed up my initial thoughts, I was going with my initial thoughts. So if you haven't been able to influence that tender yourself, you haven't had any contact with them, and in some cases now tenders in the UK, they say, please do not contact me before you've filled in the tender. Fill in the tender first, and then we'll have a conversation if we can be bothered, is kind of what it would say.
So would you not do that? Would you not even fill that tender in?
So somebody's always influenced a tender. If it's not you, it's someone else. If it's based on an existing specification they have, that existing specification will favour their existing provider. So one of the things I'd want to know before I put that tender forward and spend a day, 2 days, 3 days filling that tender document in, is the existing provider being invited to tender? In which case, why are you tendering? Because a lot of businesses know they want to carry on using the existing provider, but they're just tendering to get 3 quotes to show they've gone through a fair process. Waste of everybody's time. I'd rather know that before I spend 1, 2, 3 days filling in a tender request than after, when I think I've got a chance of winning it. I could have been doing something in the 3 days that would have helped me bring in more business. That's just a waste of time.
So what would you have been doing in those 3 days? How do you think salespeople are best positioned to get business, spending their time?
Yeah. So the standout salesperson is really focused on new business development, and whatever that would be. A lot of my clients now, I do a lot of work with the internet and digital selling and LinkedIn and various things. Some people in some industries will still do cold calling. Some will do physical visits. Some will do prospecting over the internet. Some will do some kind of networking. Anything that's proactively bringing in leads for the business. Most standard salespeople don't spend enough time prospecting. So therefore, when they're qualifying, they don't have enough deals in their pipeline, don't have enough opportunities. So they're hoping that all of them come off. And when one doesn't, particularly a sizable one, it's devastating. It's bad enough if you're a salesperson, that's cost you a target and commission. It's devastating if it's your own business and that was paying your bond and your food bill and all that kind of stuff for the month. Okay,
so much more prospecting, much more filling up that pipeline, and you would do that through, and you do a lot through LinkedIn, right? LinkedIn is, in fact, and you even offer a program, don't you? On LinkedIn, leveraging LinkedIn. I know, interesting in our game of a certain individual with no website, no demo video, but purely on LinkedIn has this thriving business. Would you agree that's a possibility?
It's effectively digital real estate. It's the online version of you. Buyers and decision makers will now check not only businesses, but the individuals they're dealing with online, which in a business-to-business scenario, if you're a business selling to another business, that place is going to be LinkedIn. People will be disqualifying you from giving you business or having an opportunity to do business with them based on your LinkedIn profile. They'll either qualify you in or qualify you out. The challenge is you won't know that because the ones that qualify you out won't contact you. They've contacted your competitors. So anything where they can see online, because the challenge is it's very hard these days just to check credibility. How do we know somebody's good or not? We're going to do our own investigation. We're going to kind of put our cynical hats on, look at the website, look at a LinkedIn profile. If it's business to consumer, it might be Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. We're going to use anything we can to form a judgment. Do I like this person? Can I trust them? Can we do business with them, etc.? So it's very important that our online presence matches our offline presence, and very often for business owners and salespeople, it doesn't.
Okay, we've got about 35 seconds left. As one final key to anyone, and in some ways we're all salespeople who have to go out there and influence, what would you tell us? What do you think we can do to stand out? What one quick win would you advise?
Focus on the opportunities where you can add most value, where people want to do business with you and are willing to pay a premium and appreciate the services you provide. Don't run around begging everybody for business and trying to do business just for the sake of it and to win the business. Focus on the ones where it's going to be a good relationship, there's going to be future work, you're going to get recommendations and referrals, and they're willing to pay the price you want to charge. Most of us, most business owners and salespeople, their work should be more valued than it is. That just requires us being sharper in the sales process. One of the biggest challenges right now, Justin, is regurgitation. So there's so much information on the internet. Most of traditional sales training is based on a book from the 1920s, and people still follow that process. People are struggling, don't know where to get information. Big companies aren't doing the big sales training programs they did anymore. And as you talk to any of our futurists like Peter Heldenhays, Michael Jackson, Graham Codrington, the world is changing so fast. Even sales techniques of 5 or 10 years ago are out of date, let alone 100 years ago. So nowadays it's more about sales development. Everybody that runs a business is involved with sales, supports a sales team, needs to be developing themselves every single year, even every few months, to stay up to date. Regurgitation of what we find on the internet, what worked 5 years ago, will not cut it in today's environment.
Andy Preston, thanks for helping us to be standout salespeople.
Thanks, Justin.
Thank you.